are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show for y'all. We're going to have another conversation with our special guest, Mandy Pallock. She was on our show not too long ago with the question habit, unlocking deeper conversations. Today, we're going to continue that conversation, and we're just going to have a little bit more fun with that because whether it's about expanding your impact with your career or impact with your family, whatever your focus is, this is going to be a topic of continuing how we can have these important questions that will spark even more further growth. So without further ado, I want to say to you, Mandy, it's great to catch up again. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm ecstatic to be here and grateful to be launching into 2025 as we're already committed, but looking to see what it has and excited about what's around the corner.
And since then, you've been on TV, you've been like doing all these other shows. So yes. Before we go crazy into the topic, kind of catch us up with the audience, how has your brand been growing? Because I see you making some pretty awesome moves.
Yeah, it's been so exciting to be someone who's available to answer questions and available to talk about what does it look like to build relationships through questions. And it's something that we're all really wanting to do better at. We recognize that and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, grateful to have been a part of conversations that kind of ask that question.
Questions, it connects with mentors and how we go through the process of being a mentee. When someone who's young in their career and they're trying to navigate that part of their life, what's some of the good questions they can be asking people who are above them that can kind of pull them up to the next level?
Oh man, Shamaya, that is fantastic. It's such a good question because we want to learn from people that are further down the road in their careers in different areas that we respect and want to emulate or want to learn from. And even if you're not going to emulate everything about that person's arc, can learn from individuals, and it's such a good thing. So as I answer your question, I'm going to back up. And I think sometimes we put pressure on a mentor or pressure on ourselves to find someone that's the all-in-one mentor that can model for us what life is supposed to look like. And I don't think it's like that. I think there's freedom when we say, hey, here's someone in this area. Here's a successful community leader that I really respect. Here is a family guy that I really respect. Here is a work-related coworker or someone that's down the career path that I really respect and I can learn some. And so when you ask yourself, what is it that I'm most interested in discovering and what area of life? It really helps hone that because there's nothing worse than showing up in a mentor type conversation and it's so vague that you don't know what you're doing. You're just thinking, man, I'm just really struggling. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Just tell me, give me your wisdom. That's just not going to be life-giving for someone who you're asking, that you're asking to give their time to. And so all that to say, think through ahead of time. If you're this up and comer that wants to really be specific and get this good wisdom, be specific. Say, can I take you out for breakfast? It's going to be an hour and a half. I have 8 questions that I'd love to ask you. So thinking through what are those questions ahead of time so you can really focus on the conversation. One question that I love is, can you tell the story of how you got into your field of work? And just as they share that story, it's going to reveal so many things. And maybe there are follow-up questions that you'd want to ask in that. Tell me more about that. Or what did that look like for you? And so if they're willing to share their story. And another question I really, really love is, what would you say is the secret to success? and taking some time to talk about that too, because someone who's, I've spoken with a highly, highly, highly successful businessman who's in his grandfather years. You know, his secret to success is different than when you ask that question to a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old. And it's really interesting to kind of look at those different answers and what that looks like. A third question that's really valuable is, how do you react when you encounter challenges in your life? How do you react when you encounter challenges? Because we can learn from those hard things even more. And I love asking what books or periodicals or podcasts should I be consuming, and what can I learn from them? Who are the 3 mentors who mentored you in your ministry and your vocation and your work? How did they do it? What did you learn? How did they affect the person that you became today? And then I have more questions, but if I just had one more, 2 more that I love asking, I'll say 2 more. One is like, what would you have wanted to know at my age? And just giving that opportunity for them to pass on their wisdom, because I'm assuming they're a little bit older than me. So what would you have wanted to know at my age? How did you discover it? And then last question, I'm always intrigued with how they manage their time successfully, and we can learn from that. So what does it look like to manage your time, and how are you doing it? So going in with some questions in your back pocket will make that time a really profitable time. And then I wonder about just sending a quick note afterwards to say, hey, thank you so much for your time, and touching base on that relationship. What does that look like for you, Shemaiah?
I would say everything you said is something that we have to eventually address. In order for us to go to the next level, we have to actually understand what is our true realistic situation. People always talk about analytics and that stuff. I kind of touched on how we've been able to grow to the point where we're getting clear analytics on the show as far as who's tuning in and the demographics in that area. I think the same applies to our personal lives. If we are growing truthfully, then we are always observing and seeing where we actually are landing. What are we actually seeing around us? Are we making impact? Are we not making impact? Are we finding new people that we're meeting that's helping us get to the next level? Are we around people that it's time to, graduate from? And no offense, but let's go on and move on with our lives. So I think it's being observant, understanding where we are, and if we don't look around, then we might miss the chance of actually getting to the next level because we're not being truthful with our performance.
I love that perspective of thinking through what are the analytics of my life and taking the time to look at that. That's so wise, and also something you can measure.
Yeah, because when you think about your approach with the question habit, we probably should be asking ourselves some questions that can boost our confidence, because at one point in time, I'm still an introvert, but, I was so shy. I didn't want to be on camera with I'm Be Focused podcast. And since September last year, I've been going over that fear factor. So I'm living proof that you can be an introvert, but still get your butterfly wings and be an extrovert. And I think that's key. Confidence is something that you have to have the hunger for. It's not something you talk about being prepared for the mentee, being prepared for the mentor. You have to also be confident, because if you can't ask them questions because you're too shy or you just don't know yet, well, you're not only wasting their time, you also be wasting your time, because not only would they not have that connection to what you're trying to accomplish, you yourself are roaming around the map and you're not even being specific in what you actually want to do. And I think a lot of that has to do with not having confidence in yourself and your ability to kind of reach out to the unknown and seeing what's available.
Absolutely. It reminds me of how important purpose is, because when we understand our purpose, I'll use that word calling, right? When you have an idea of what's that thing that you just have this drive to do, to accomplish, to become a people that you love serving or reaching, and something to share with them, then you have a reason to get out of your shell. Yeah. You know, if you have this big purpose, or even one that's like, hey, this is specific. I have these specific goals, this specific dream, then I'm willing to extrovert a little bit, if you will, to reach out and say, hey, this is what it looks like, and what's your perspective on it? And if I don't have that purpose, then I'm just going to keep all that to myself and not be motivated to share it.
When you are building your brand and trying to build your platform, it goes hand in hand with your purpose and the question habit. Yes. Because if you're not asking yourself questions, you probably you're having a hard time finding answers.
Absolutely.
Think of something critical that might happen. We see things happen on the news all the time. It starts at the top, right? Top trickles down. The first person to get blamed is the person at the very top of the peak. So we have to also learn how to take accountability in our platform that we're trying to build. If we are just going to be like, oh, well, so-and-so we can't play the victim. We can't play the, woe is me, because if that's what you're trying to do, if that's what you're trying to build, trying to get to that position in the career, where you're trying to build this type of community with your brand, it starts with you. Like it's not any outside source that's going to help you build what you're trying to build. I mean, they play a role as far as some help, but when it comes to the bottom line, you're at the beginning.
The purpose, this calling, this purpose idea, it gives direction. And also, in a world where you could spend you could throw marketing dollars, and even more valuable, you could throw time at endless amounts of opportunities, right? And when you've honed in on, well, what's that why? What's that purpose that I'm working toward? It makes the focusing, we'll call it branding, it makes that aspect really specific too, which is really helpful. I'll tell a story with that if I can, Shemaya. When I first got started, after I'd written the question habit and was working on the launch, post-launch, I had the opportunity to speak to several different audiences. And in that, it was very discovery based, but in that process, it really helped me hone who is the audience that I'm supposed to be speaking to, and what does that look like? And it was really valuable to do those things so that I could find it out. So I would say if someone's in that process of getting started, do it, jump in and try it out, but use it as gather the analytics. Was that effective? Did it meet those goals? Was it delightful? Are there ways that I could make it more effective or better? If I were to change it to this audience or this outreach or this venue, would that be more effective for the platform that I have right now? Asking those questions are really, really helpful from a communication perspective.
Once again, I'm Focus Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Mandy. Go her website, thequestionhabit.com. Another thing I want to touch on, I had a previous guest I interviewed earlier this morning, and he was discussing reducing stress and increasing joy. In his line of work, him as a father, he works with parents all the time and helping them reducing stress that comes with parenthood. I want to tie that into what we're talking about right now with the question habit, because in order for us to have more joy in our lives, we have to be very intentional about it, because you're going to be happy or you're not going to be happy. But here's the kicker. Every day that happens, life is going to be happening. And it's going to give you reasons to have a lot of stress. And you get to choose, though, how you react to that. So for the audience, kind of touch on what are some of the ways we can be purpose driven on expressing more joy versus, oh, my God, I'm so stressed and woe is me. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm learning and have learned that recognizing where I am is the most effective way to then be able to outline where I should be or where I want to be. And so I can tell myself I'm a decently optimistic person. I wake up in the morning and I'm the sunshiny person ready to drink my cup of coffee and jump into the day. And I've found that in that, like when I bump into these negative emotions or stressful scenarios, it's really helpful to just straight out acknowledge it. Hey, this is actually stressful. This actually was no fun. This was a painful circumstance that I didn't expect. And so when I take the time to acknowledge it, instead of just jump straight to happy-go-lucky, the sky is rosy, there are rainbows everywhere, it's a lot healthier and it's a lot more, it's going to be rooted in truth. And so when I'm experiencing stress, when I'm experiencing emotions or a tough relationship that I didn't expect, I can take the time to pause and say, what might be at the root of this, and be really curious about it, you know? And as a Christian, I'm going to take those questions a little bit more personally. You know, is there something bigger going on? Is there something in my heart that I need to address, or I need to ask God to help me address? And so when I'm asking those questions, I'm really taking the time to go through that and analyze this stress or this hard situation, so that as I move through it, I'm keeping my eye on the beautiful outcome that I'm going for, and I can shoot for that. So remind me what your original question was.
No, it was just basically, I'm going to paraphrase myself. It's just basically managing the stresses that we basically are having day to day, but also be intentional with finding joy, because if we don't have the focus that I'm going to find joy, even if it makes me stressed out, is because if we don't have that mindset, we are always going to find something to be mad about. We're going to always find something to be angry about and overthinking, over worried, because as I've been growing with this show, I mean, it's been a process. I went from dark shadows with the lighting to I have nice lighting now. You know, it's painful, man. You know, sometimes you look back and it's like, whoa, what was going on, man? I'm like doing a show in the cave or something. But that's what the truthful part of being able to observe analytics and understand that if you're not really serious about this, you know, our dreams are dreams, but life will happen to you and ask you, how serious are you about these dreams? Because I'm going to throw you curveballs and sometimes you're going to strike out, but are you going to show up the next game? And I feel like that's what happens. And we are not in that habit of asking ourselves, I would say, crucial questions. Not only do we miss the opportunity to grow, we also miss the opportunity to better ourselves, because growth and self-improvement, it is the most important two things you need to have. If you're not improving, you're not growing. And if you're not truthful, you're living under a false narrative that most of everybody's going to peep out and say, he ain't genuine. He's not doing this for any other reason other than just trying to be on, you know, a camera or something. So I think you have to have that kind of mindset that if I'm going to grow, then I have to actually observe, what am I doing? Is it working? Is it not working? Is my lighting jacked up? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all small pieces that you find along the way. And if you don't piece it together right, you're not going to see any improvement. It's just going to keep flatline.
Yeah. It reminds me of that whole idea that, like, you want to think through, where am I and where am I going and how am I going to get there? And in this process, we want, if we're thinking through, hey, how do I handle this situation, or how do I improve something? Thinking through, where am I and where am I going? And then how am I going to get there is really helpful, because wherever you are is a good place to start. It might not be where you want to end up. And I mean, I love your example of your growth, because it didn't keep you from doing it, but you're making it better along the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was going to say, let's talk about your recent successes, because I mean, you had to see yourself. Okay, all right, I'm this author and I'm on these shows, and okay, but what's next? Because how did that process look like for you, as far as how you had to think of yourself at one level, but now since last time we met, you're doing some pretty amazing things. So kind of share with the audience what has been your personal process, how you've been studying yourself in order for you to actually keep going and keep growing.
Yeah, I love the reality that every conversation is an opportunity to talk about the things that are important, those calling and purpose related things, in a way that serves somebody else. Right. And so when we have that orientation of how can I support you? How can I serve you? How can I cheer you on in what you're doing? I feel like that resonates, as there are individuals who are looking for resources, as there are people that are thinking, man, I have this relationship I really value. How can I make it better? Or, man, I've got this awkward relationship with my preteen. What do I do? You know, as you're thinking through, like, and when you're coming in with whatever it is you have to say, with a perspective of support, with excellence, that's a pretty exciting place to be. And sometimes it's a matter of being in the room and saying yes.
Yeah. And also being able to show up, because it's one thing to be available, but it's another thing to actually deliver. And I learned the hard way. Like I said, doing this show has been a journey of itself. I always got to tell the story, but I'm not going to tell in detail. But I want to emphasize, starting from the barbershop and now we're here, it's crazy. It went from clippers in the background, it was cool though, because it felt like you was in the shop getting your hair cut. But it's just funny to think about some of the things, some of the elements. It's like, wow, we started from humble beginnings and now we are here. But to your point, I want to touch on the fact there's a guy at the shop and he made an observation on the show. And he asked a question after a show one day. He said, "What's next?" And I was caught off guard because I was like, man, we're doing it, man. Like, we're getting some cool guests at the shop. What do you mean what's next? But he said, he had a serious look and he said, no, seriously, what's next? Yes. He said, I see you doing this at the barbershop, but what are you doing? Like, what is the future? Because, and it was funny because he broke it down. He said, the thing is like, you reach this level, but are you going to stay there? You're talking about habit of questions, right?
Yes. Such a good question to ask. That was a mentor who was able to say, hey, what's next?
That was uncomfortable, man, because I was so comfortable being at the barbershop. I was like, why you gotta ask me that, man? Because that means I got to do more work. I got to do more planning. I got to do all this other stuff. And you look at today versus way back then, 2017. Yeah. I'm glad he asked those questions because it was a test to see if I'm serious. Yeah. Or if I'm just fooling around and I'm just going to wing it. Like, I'm just going to do a show and we're never going to grow. We're never going to get better. And I love that he had a serious tone about it, is because I wouldn't be doing the audience good. Because if I'm on the show talking about all this growth stuff and I'm not even doing myself, and I'm still at the barbershop after all these years, what does that tell them? So I just had to share that piece because the habit of questions, it starts with not just you, but someone who sees potential in you. Listen up when they ask you questions, because it might be something that's actually going to spark you to do something different and actually mature. Because if you can't get to that next level, it's not because of anybody else. It's because the one you see in the mirror.
Yeah. And when you have that curiosity, right, when you're willing to welcome the questions of others and then ask yourself those hard questions, that's where good change happens.
When you look at the opportunity of not just impacting the people that read your book, that they can go to the website in the show notes, but what do you hope that people will start to implement, because it's one thing to have good knowledge, but it's a whole different game when you start to actually take that action, because it doesn't matter how small the step is. The whole point is you don't want to be passive and just read information and say, oh, yeah, I read that good book.
Exactly. Yeah. Shemaiah, I have this dream that dads and moms and men and women and up and comers and people who want to see that their life matters and that their life makes a difference, that they would bring a curiosity to their day, to that like once in a lifetime day that they're in. And that when they bring this curiosity to that once in a lifetime day and they're asking questions and really listening, as they're thinking through those questions for themselves, or listening as they're speaking with other people and really actively listening, that's going to be the thing that changes the world. That when we enter into this conversation of being able to, in a place where we're known and challenged and encouraged and motivated, to ask questions, to think about them, to take it deeper, that's where relationships get built. That's where families get together. That's how love stories are made. That's how businesses are built. That's the stuff that's going to change the world. So that's my dream.
But once again, you're listening and watching Army Focus Radio here on YouTube, and also podcast radio, talking to our special guest, Mandy Pallock. You can go to her website, thequestionhabit.com. And last thing I want to discuss before we sign off is how faith plays a role in everything. I recently talked to a guy who was touching on being bold with your faith, because we live in a culture where they try to, make people feel, they can't express their faith. Now, yes, you can probably do it in a way where it's a little bit more humble and, polite. But what do you think? What's your thoughts on how we should utilize our faith, whether it's professionally or in the household?
Okay, I'm going to share my all-time favorite question. And it goes, it's a question that I ask God. I say, God, would you include me in what you're doing right here? Because God is already on the move. He's already at work. He loves you like crazy. And so when I come into a conversation asking God, would you include me in what you're doing? It's amazing. Like I could tell story after story of how God answers that prayer. And so what does that look like? To answer your question, as we're sharing our faith, as we're saying, wherever you are is a great place to start, right? And so we might think, man, I'm really good at that. Or man, I'm way too scared and I don't know if I could do it in this context. Just pray that prayer. Just say, hey, God, would you include me in what you're doing? Because then I don't have to force something. I don't have to go out and follow a template. I don't have to make a conversation awkward. I'm just moving into where God already is in a way that he's delighted to include me in. So I would encourage your listeners to just pray that prayer. Say, I'm going to pray it for a week and see what happens. So for 7 days, God, would you include me in what you're already doing in these places I'm going to today? And really amazing stuff is going to happen.
I like you said that, because the guy I talked to recently on the show, he was basically saying the same thing. You need to first identify yourself, because confidence is not the overkill that turns into pride, because pride will put you in a place where you think you're above people, and that's not what we're trying to say. We're just simply saying, believe in what you believe in, and be bold to the point that encourages people to want to know more about why you believe what you believe, versus the whole toxic, like, oh, this is me, and, blah, 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 and you're thunder and lightning on everybody. And that's not what we're trying to do here. But you also don't want to be to the point where you're not confident. And then you're just trying to please everybody, happy-go-lucky. And that can only do good for so long, to the point you have to either compromise or you have to make a decision that is this what I truly believe. So my last question for you would be, when you look at how your faith has been able to give you these opportunities, what do you hope you will continue to learn as you are progressing in your professional world, and also with your faith and how important it is with that whole journey?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the stories that's really meaningful to me in the Bible is where the master tells his servant, "Well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your master." And I have been thinking through, well, what does it look like? How do you get to the end of your life and hear a well done? And it looks like getting to your end of your Monday and hearing well done at the end of Monday, and then getting to the end of Tuesday and hearing well done at the end of Tuesday. And so to answer your question, Shemaiah, getting to the end of this current project cycle and hearing well done. And then, as you said, we're always dreaming, we're always having goals, we're always looking toward the future, stepping into those with faith and confidence, and a willingness for them to adjust as you move forward, but moving forward and looking to hear a well done after and in the midst of those as well. So that's faithfulness to me, that consistency, and that's what true growth looks like, that we'd get 1% better, if you will, that we're growing that consistent 1% every day, which is just faithfulness. It's showing up and hearing a well done at the end of every day.
Well, once again, been listening, watching I'm Focused Radio online, talking to our guest today, Mandy Pallock. Go to her website, thequestionhabit.com. Also, her book is available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. I'm sure she's probably has other projects that she will update you on if you go book more on that website. I know it's going to lead to other websites that she has as well. We'll have to do this again, but flat out of time. But like always, I want to say to you, Mandy, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shemaiah. I'm grateful.